Hello and welcome to the Annie Altman Show, the podcast, season 5. Welcome to the 5th episode in the Communication C series. Today, I'm so fortunate to be here with Jon Kinnard, all the way from in Los Angeles. Jon does all of the things. So he has a coffee business, Coffee del Mundo, and I'm going to put all the stuff here in the bio. He does coaching for other businesses. He does all sorts of his own creative projects. You can find him at Hustle to Create on Instagram. And again, it'll all be linked here. I'm so glad to have you on the podcast and finally get to connect and have this time to communicate about communicating.
Yes. Thank you so much, Annie, for the invitation. It's been long overdue.
We are here. It wasn't the time to do it until now.
What will be, will be.
Much easier to communicate that in the moment rather than trusting the process sometimes of it will happen when it is supposed to happen.
If we haven't learned that after last year, then I don't know what to say.
All of the learning. I'd love for you to share a little bit about yourself in your own words for whoever's listening, tuning in to share wherever you feel like going about where you were born, what you like doing, Coffee del Mundo. Where do you feel like sharing?
Okay. Well, first off, thank y'all for tuning in today and being a fan of Annie. I'm a fan, and I'm so happy that I get to be on the show today. A little bit about myself. Again, my name is Jon Kinnard. I am a Black Afro-Latino that is a creative here in Los Angeles by way of Nashville, Tennessee. So I am a Southern gentleman at heart. But that is overshadowed by all these creative juices that flow everywhere from everything that I have a passion for. And so I'm a firm believer that we were all born a creative. And so that's the whole premise and vision that I have for living, is to hustle to create a better life for yourself. I believe, we have a lot of things we can consume, but I believe that we're born in the image of our creator, and our creator is a creator. So what are we doing if we're not creating, right? We are not doing what we were designed to do. So I love art. I love music. I do singing. I do drawing. I do cooking, roasting, anything dealing with creativity. You'll find me there at some point in my life, if not this life, the next.
All the creative projects, every one of them.
Let's do them all. Why not?
And I find it really cool that you get involved in so many different layers and levels of each of them. Like you were talking about how you are working on a documentary or docuseries, and you're filming with the people who you get coffee beans from and going to the farmers, and you're on all the different levels of creation. It's the attention to detail I love. It's really cool to see.
Thank you. Yeah, the goal is to, as I create or in those environments, I want to impact and leave an impression. So if that impact for that moment is to be the stage for a narrative that needs to be heard around the world, then that's the form that I'll take shape. If it's in the time to kind of just be that brain and tool and resource for people who need more knowledge in building their business, then hey, I'll be that source of energy from that mode. But at the end of the day, I just want to create and help as many people as I can.
Has that been a sort of focus for you? Like when you were a little kid, did you have that sort of, I'm here to make a big positive impact, and how am I going to do it? Where did that come from?
Yeah, I would say that I, as a young child, noticed a lot of injustices and a lot of things that would occur. And so I wanted to make sure that a lot of people didn't have to deal with that. And so I always, even from a young age, wanted to be an attorney for the simple fact to change. I wanted to change the laws. Even though I didn't end up being an attorney, the ultimate goal was to get into policy reform. So although I have these numerous passions, at the end of the day, I believe my purpose, which is a little deeper than what my passions are, is to fight for that equality and justice. And so I've always been one to whatever room I'm in, I make sure that there's equality and justice around me, and I will be that voice. I will be that champion for those things. And has it made me the most popular guy at times? Absolutely not. But have I been true to my purpose? Absolutely. And that's what it's about, is to make sure that, we leave the world a better place. And as you can see, there's a lot of things changing, and I'm really happy to be a part of it and to see our generation really at the helm of this thing, taking the, hand by the wheels, and we're in here driving this thing. And I'm really excited to see what that looks like 5, 15, 20 years down the road. But yes, absolutely, to answer your question, yes.
It amazes me sometimes how fast and how slow it seems like the change happens, and the different sort of generational and also just different groups of peoples and different communities, and how much it's talked about. That sort of like you were saying of that born to create, I do feel this inherent drive in humans to help other humans. Altruism is selfish. Everyone benefits when somebody's helped. And it's really exciting to me too, for especially in the entrepreneurial and business world, to see that shift happening there too, and to see a lot of the shift, I feel like, starting there and having it be, it's like kind of working within the systems rather than exclusively like fuck capitalism, being like, okay, well, how do we integrate this with ways to help people and ways to have and support equitable systems.
Yeah, absolutely. The dawn of social capitalism is here. And so I'm very happy to be a part of the generation that ushered it in. And now that we're here, it's like now you're seeing all of these things with B corporations and all of these official certifications and things. And it's like, hey, we are holding everything to a magnifying glass, and we will make sure to communicate what we believe is what this new world is going to look like. And so I love it. I love our generation, Annie. I love it. I love it. I love it. I love it. We are the ones that are here and changing it and doing it.
I love the love. The future is now. It's happening now. And I love too, it makes sense hearing that, of that very business mindset and that detail oriented mindset, that's, we're going to go through every line of this and see, where's this ethical? Where's this money coming from? Who benefits from this? Who's that? What are they getting from this? How can we actually have this serve everyone? And how can we shift to, I'd be curious, the perspective shift that happens personally and on a bigger perspective of, I'd be really curious to hear you share more about social capitalism and this integrating the concept that everyone can win, that everyone can be taken care of.
Yeah, it's kind of like our economy right now is, I believe, looks like a trickle down economy. Honestly, they believe that, oh, well, if these major corporations do well, then they can provide benefits and affordable healthcare for these people. But it's our generation came in and said, you know what? No, that was the old world. What we want now is an ability to create and provide value to the world and solve problems and make a living. And that's what we want to do. And so now that we have this access to the internet and this new virtual world, we don't need all of these brick and mortars. We don't need all of these marketing campaigns behind these huge brands. What we need is genuine solutions for people with a genuine sense of care. And that's what our generation is demanding. And so you see many companies springing up right now. And you see a lot of major corporations trying to be what I call a culture vulture and post a couple of images to reflect people of color. But as you keep scrolling, you'll see that it was just temporary. And you'll see that this new world is going to be the reverse of a trickle-down economy. It's going to be more of a localized economy where there's no more billionaires, a lot of more millionaires, and everybody's living a good life. I believe, ultimately that if you are a billionaire, what that means to me and what that represents is that you are the most selfish human being in this world. Because if you can have $1 billion and not solve all of these problems, knowing that you could still live your life. They say the for your life, what these millionaires agreed on to, if they said, if I never had to get any money again, how much money would I need to live for the rest of my life and enjoy it? The figure was 500 million, right? So you're telling me that you know good and well that all you need is 500 million, right? And you still have billions of dollars. I understand assets, but there's these folks who have a lot of liquid money. So it's like, we're no longer allowing that to happen. We're going to spread it. We're going to make sure we all have our freedom to live happily and to pursue our happiness, which is not inside of some major corporation slaving away, clocking in hours. It's creating and solving problems for the world that we live in. And I love it. I love it. I love it.
I'm so glad you brought up billionaires and the concept and the whole perspective that is hoarding wealth and hoarding something that we've created. The concept of money, and something I reflect on a lot, is that you can hoard wealth much more easily than you can hoard something more tangible, which is interesting too, with the whole like, well, that's brick and mortar or not brick and mortar. And it's like, money's not tangible either a lot of the time. And then people can hoard it more easily. And exactly like you're saying, take all emotions out of it. On a logical level, you're holding on to more than you could ever use to still live your exact dream, comfortable life, when you know there's people who could use it that day for food, for housing, for their baseline resources. And to connect it with the communication C, and what I get so fired up about too is seeing people in business who are also like, yeah, I'm here to make a fuck ton of money, calling it out, calling it in, communicating to say, okay, let's make this about the numbers. We've crunched the numbers. 500 million is this figure. That's more than $1 billion. You don't need to be hoarding this. Let's talk about it. Let's communicate. Why are you doing that? What else could be happening? And also, how do we shift the culture overall to, like you were saying, having more millionaires rather and not having billionaires, and having the whole perspective.
Yeah, you see it with Jeff Bezos' wife. She was a prime champion for what should be happening across the table, across the board for all of these billionaires. Is, look, there's no way me nor generations of my seed can spend this money. So what am I going to do? I'm going to give it to other people so they can take it and do things beyond what I could ever even do. And that's when America will really, really become something great.
When it's flowing around too, like it makes sense.
Abundant, just free flowing.
Rather than just sitting somewhere.
Mm-hmm. Even if you look at Maslow's hierarchy of needs, the first thing, food, safety, shelter, if we could just take care of that and health. Like, imagine the amount of time and energy and thoughts that go into people stressing about paying their bills. Imagine alleviating that across the whole nation. How much time can I spend instead of worrying? And now I can create, because I have that freedom, and my mind is a blank canvas instead of painted with dark terrors that I believe is foreshadowed with my lack of income or security, right? And so that's where we're failing, right? We have in America the greatest genetic pool of any other place in the world, any country, right? And so if you just think about genetically, what we have access to is the most amount of creativity in the world and the most amount of random spontaneity that could occur. We have all races, all genes reflected here in this cultural phenomenon of the United States, right? But yet we refuse to give resources to everyone in that genetic pool, right? We only give resources to one major segment of that genetic pool. But imagine if we gave resources to them all, what we could do. What could our Olympic team look like? What could our scientists of cancer killing agents look like? Imagine. But what do we do? We keep a few billionaires, keep a couple of billionaires, hoarding all the money, all the resources, all of the influence in these systems, and we trickle it down and we give a couple of droplets down to the people at the bottom. And it's like there's a Netflix show where it like it's just floors, different stages. I forget what it's called, but it's like a foreign film. And the concept is you wake up every day in this prison and you're on a different floor, and the floor goes from 1 to like 10,000, right? And every floor is 2 people that are in prison. And so at the top, they load it with a buffet with enough food for everybody in the prison. And it lowers down slowly, so you only get a little bit of time enough time to eat what you need on your floor before it's lowered to the next floor. But because of the way people think, they hoard, and so by the time it gets halfway down, everybody else starves. And so it's like that concept that we have here with this capitalistic system is that we got people starving. There's enough food for everybody. There is enough food for everybody. We're just but we got to change it. And so creativity is what fuels all of that change, is what I believe.
Me too. And I'm really glad again for you bringing up food and these things that are so important to communicate about, and that get, I feel like, swept under the rug and sort of ignored and downplayed, rather than every day being like, hello, America, we still have billionaires. There are still people who are hungry, while there are people who have more money than their children's children could spend. What are we doing? Let's talk about it again today. Let's do something about it again today. And let's circulate this. And to the point too of imagine how much more creativity could happen. And also imagine how much the creativity that's already happening could change by actually reflecting the population, rather than hoarding, having resources distributed inequitably, and then having specific demographics controlling where the resources keep getting hoarded to, and having people still blocked out of being able to create and be part of different communities and have the platforms to communicate about this.
That's the name of that movie, The Platform. I just looked it up.
Ooh, cool circle.
Yeah, you got to watch it. It's great. It's an amazing movie.
Yeah, it sounds intense and sad and very real.
Yeah.
And that going deep into that human psychology that says that isn't all of us, we're all human, that maybe it's the fear of being without. I feel like that a lot with billionaires, and being curious about how much, what is the mindset, right? What's happening that is someone's waking up every day with the ability to go feed a bunch of people and still live super lavishly, and every day choosing not to do that. So what is the perspective of, is it shame? Is it fear of being without? Is it both? Is it other things? What's going on?
I wonder. I would want to know too.
Do you feel like it's relevant? Like, I wonder that too, of sometimes, and I'm like, well, I'm not those people and I don't know, and they're not on the podcast. I'm not able to ask them that. And does it feel like maybe not that as much as, how do we communicate about it, right? Like, how do you even break through that communication to be like, yo, dude, what's up? What are you doing?
I would say that if it were me in that situation, I'm the type of person who, I believe I live in abundance, and I live in abundance of the gifts that I have, right? I'm able to constantly do these things. Like, for example, the knowledge that I have in business to help people, that's something that I have as a resource, as value. And so what I try to do is provide value to people who are in need of the gifts that I have. And so if I have a large set of money, that's another form of value that I have, stored value. And if there's people out there who could take that stored value and use it in a way that I can't even use it, then I'm going to, because it's in abundance for me, I'm going to share that. I'm not out here telling people how to win the Super Bowl, because there's not an abundance of knowledge or value that I have to offer for that, right? I don't know anything about football championships, right? But what I do have value in, I'm giving that as much as I can. When I'm not doing it for me, I'm giving it to as many people as I can. And so to answer your question, I believe I would be giving stuff away, because if I know that I got there, I would be challenging myself to do it again. If I already knew the system, like, to me, it would be more of a fun life or fulfilling life to know that I did it. Now let's give half of it away back to 500 million and let's do it again. You know, like, that's how I would be living. I wouldn't, a billionaire, who, no, you guys who are billionaires, you guys are the most selfish humans in the world. I'm giving away everything above 500 million, and I'm going to double it again. And then when I do, I'm going to give half of it away again. And I'm going to challenge all the other billionaires to start doing the same. Are you scared you can't make it again? Are you scared? Then at least live off your 500 billion. You know, I would challenge them all. I would be up there.
I would love to see, I look forward to seeing you doing that. That would be so amazing. With that
Yes.
whole perspective shift, which, yeah, fuck to the yes. I challenge you, because it is, who knows better how to make that amount of money than someone who has done it before? It is like,
and you have all the money in the world.
That, yeah, the worst case scenario, again, is that you're still okay. You're still good. What, in sort of kind of shift into your own internal communication, like, what, I'd be curious to hear more about what got you to this perspective, or this seems sort of linked to what you were sharing of when you were little and noticed all of these injustices and went through your own sort of internal communications. It seemed like a really consistent theme that we both share, of very regularly thinking and feeling about resource distribution and people hoarding money and people being restricted in their creativity, and then all of humanity being restricted, and how we could all advance and evolve.
Yes.
If everyone had the abilities and the
resources
tools and resources. If everybody had resources, period.
You know, I believe that every issue in this world and in life is an issue of understanding or of resources. And I believe what this world does not have is a lack of understanding. With all of the years of knowledge and lives lived and documented information, we don't have a lack of understanding. What we have is a lack of resources that are distributed properly, right? There's enough resource. We don't even have a lack of resources, but those resources are not being distributed properly. And for me, it did start at a young age when I was going to a public school, and in Tennessee, they have these things called magnet schools, and you have to get put into a lottery and you get to go to one of these magnet schools, and they're a lot better than your public education system. And so I got put into the lottery, and I was like, ooh, yeah, whoopity-doo-dah, I'm definitely gonna go to one of these magnet schools because I've been making straight A's, right? And so, of course, my lottery number did get pulled. And one of my good friends went to that pool and got to go to one of these nice magnet schools. And so from that day forward, I said, you know what, that's not fair. Just because my parents don't have the money to pay for private school, and I didn't get a lottery pulled for this to get, and I want to go get educated, you know, I wanted that education and I couldn't get it simply because of the lack of resources. And so I vowed to myself from that day forward, I said, okay, well, I will be a public school student, but I will be the best and I will compete with those students. And so I would always compete with my friend on all the state examinations. We would always compete. You know, I was like, I would prove, my whole thing was to prove without those resources, I could still achieve higher, you know? And so that's where that mentality kind of started. And then it kind of was reinforced when I got into college, and it was a public university, University of Tennessee, right? And I got to go full ride because I happened to go to one of the worst schools in the state for high school. So they were paying for students to go to college. And so I got to go for free, and I got to go to the University of Tennessee, and I had a blast and I had a great time. And it wasn't until I decided to go to grad school, and that was private. So my first experience with private school, and I'm telling you, it was night and day. And I was like, oh my gosh, imagine if I would have had access to this at a younger age. How much further along would I have been in the development or my understanding or decision making by this age if I would have had that? And it's not for lack of desire, because I like I said, I wanted to go to the best schools. That was my thing. So I said, that's not fair. And also went into debt for that. I'm like super in debt for that program, but it was definitely worth it. But it's still like, okay, when I was at the University of Tennessee, we were celebrating the 50th anniversary of allowing Black people to be educated there. 50 years only had passed. Only for two, telling me they basically have only allowed 2 generations. Because imagine me getting educated there, then I have my kid, they 18 years get into the college. So that's literally about 2 generations to get educated. And we're walking through the streets celebrating that. So it's like, how can I compete? You didn't even allow previous generations of my ancestors to get educated, but yet you're telling me to compete with this system, in this system, and pay, and then have to pay once I'm there. It just didn't make any sense to me. And so I, again, dove deeper into the institutions now of inequalities, and not only the institution of education, but the institution of healthcare, the institution of financial assistance and taxes, and how that all works. And so I studied government in undergrad. I studied business in my master's program, and now I'm here in the city of Los Angeles, and I work for the Office of Economic Development with the business coaching, and I see what's going on. And so my goal is to get into policy reform. That's ultimately why I'm here. Is you know, I love coffee, I love coaching, but at the end of the day, what I love is my community and the people who are reflective of me. And so I want to change the policies for ultimately the communities across the United States. And education and healthcare are the 2 things that are number 1 on my list. Education, because I believe that, again, we have the greatest genetic pool in the world, but we just restrict their minds and limit their access to knowledge. And that, to me, is the most idiotic thing. Imagine how many diseases could have been solved by now if we would have given those children education at the right times, to allow their minds to get enticed by their passions, to explore the human body and how it works, right? But they never got those experiments. I remember even in middle school, I literally wrote a letter to my principal because my teacher was not letting us do science experiments. I had waited my whole life to get into science class, and we weren't doing science experiments. I mean, I saw what the Disney Channel kids were doing. Hey, you know what I'm saying? I wanted to do those things too. So I challenged my teacher, and I wrote a letter to my principal and was like, hey, I'm not being educated. I don't feel like my time is being valued as a student who wants to learn science. And guess what? After that, we started doing all these science experiments, and I was learning. So it's like, I was very fortunate to be aware, but there's a lot of people who aren't, because they haven't been exposed to understand that there is a big significant difference, right? And so now that I have that knowledge, I got to do something with it. And I really got to communicate the disparity and bring attention to it in a very simple way, not complicated, just very simple, so that way everybody can understand.
Use privilege to communicate about privilege and change privilege. I appreciate you sharing so much too of that story with the magnet schools, and I'm right there with you on education and healthcare as most of the base of Maslow's pyramid, and really education being such a baseline human need. In a way, it's been commodified to say all of the psychology things that would have, impacts that would have on a child, to say you're going to get your name pulled for these different education options. Like, what in the fuck? Why
Yeah.
would it be different like that? Why? And I'm hearing too so much of your hustle with all of continually immersing yourself and getting involved and asking questions and asking why things are why they are, and asking the consistency of your communicating and your showing up. And I could totally see how that could reflect in policies, because I feel like there's a lot of connection between what is a policy, and you were saying too, of simple, and the truth being so simple is a phrase I love to quote often. The podcast used to be called True Shit, and I would say that in the intro. And I feel like policies are a simple truth communicated, of, well, also bringing in a set of value systems and a way to add value, like you were talking about too, like all of the different.
Absolutely.
How do you
It's
see?
like, is this system an institution? Go ahead.
You go.
I was going to say, is this, the way I see it is this my metric, or I would say my weighing mechanism for whether something is just or not, as far as these institutions, is, does this institution and system provide for equal opportunity for people to provide value in the world? And if the answer is no, then we got to tear it down and redo it. And when I ask that same question to education, the answer is no. When I ask that question to healthcare, no, healthcare is designed for people to be dependent on things, so their value opportunity timeline is shortened, okay? And their ability to do things that they're with their body is shortened because of what goes into it, right? And so for me, I'm like, if the answer is no, then we got to abolish, abort, get rid of it, and do something different.
And have that same consistent question for all of our different policies and systems that we are communicating about, and then have the openness to say, scratch it and start over.
It doesn't. It's okay. You know why it's okay? Because what is this year? 2021. And what year was that policy written? And what kind of climate and world was that time? Okay. Like, I'm a proponent for a sunset clause in every single policy created here on out. What that means is that all these policies and laws, when they're created, there's no expiration date or date for it to come back up for discussion. The only times it comes back up for discussion is if there's a challenge to it legally in the courts, or a new policy is written to get rid of it. But they don't really revisit them. But what I'm saying is, we should be revisiting every policy periodically, because we need to see, does it still apply to the world that we have created and evolved into? And we know from history, from plenty of examples, the answer to that is no. They do not all apply forever. We see that with women's suffrage. We see that with slavery. We see that with all types of things. So if we know that, if that's what history tells us, and we don't want to repeat history, then let's create some things in place to make sure that doesn't happen.
Which is such a loving and logical perspective, to say, let's embrace reality and let's embrace what we know reality can be at the same time. And it would be I'm so excited for you to get involved in policy things after having so much background in all the things related to policies that you'll be making, and being able to have that perspective to give to it as well. And
I'm
to the, like,
excited.
accepting of policies are inherently political, and political not needing to be this bad, dark, fuck all capitalism, fuck all politics sort of a thing, to say we can create what we want with this.
Yes, absolutely. We can create what we want.
Mm-hmm. through actually talking about it. We got to actually communicate about the policy first. Like you said, of bringing
And
it
you know
back,
what?
bringing it back around.
Bringing it back around. And the beautiful part is that our generation and the one right after us is Gen Z. We are the most connected, communicated generation that's ever walked this earth. So guess what? We're gonna take the world by storm, and it's already begun. It's already begun.
The future is now still.
Mm-hmm.
Ooh, and to tie
Mm-hmm.
it too on a personal note about the word policy now in my as a earbug, that you were sharing about having personal days on Mondays. And I'm feeling like, or thinking how that's your own personal policy and your own, these are for
Mm-hmm.
my functioning and enjoyment of being a human, that this is my policy and this is me communicating it to my loved ones. This is what I'm doing on this day. And then seeing how that translates in all the rest of the things in your life that you have done and are doing and will do, where you're communicating through it.
Yeah,
I feel
I'm
too meta,
a
a little too meta
I'm a
communicating that.
absolutely. I would consider myself a very present person, and I'm either 100% there with you or I'm not at all. And so I know for myself, I pour out a lot into people. I pour out a lot of myself into the world. And so I need somewhere to go refill my reservoir. And everybody's place where they go to refill, it looks totally different and it feels totally different. And for me, I know what that is. And it's just as crucial for me to do that than to go do some work. And if I don't get my day to myself, then it translates into everything else. And I'm operating at halfway full at the beginning of my week. And then by the end of my week, I'm wondering, why am I feeling more tired? Why am I feeling more stressed? Why am I not in balance and in tune with who I am? And why am I not happy? But at the end of the day, I've learned what works for me, and I know that that's what it takes. And you know what, Annie? Sometimes it takes a Monday, and sometimes it takes me to take a 30-minute, 40-minute, hour pause in my day just to do some stretches, do some meditation, and rebalance even during the day, because once a week may not be enough. Some days are more challenging than others, right? But to understand that when there is a lot of pressure, that it does need to be directed to somewhere, and that meditation and that moment of stillness allows me to diffuse it and absorb it and turn it into energy and fuel.
That was like a political entrepreneurial coaching sermon. Oh my gosh. I look forward already to re-listening to that like last sound bit. Holy fuck. And that shift that just shows that same generational shift to say, what if we set up businesses where people could go do that easily? And that was the norm. And that was the policy of like, hey, I'm having a rough day today. I'm going to take 20 minutes and go stretch and get my head back on. And then I'll be more present with customers or with this project or with whatever it is.
Absolutely.
So it's possible.
It is. It is. I honestly imagine a world in the near future where we truly have a day where all businesses are almost closed, like how they take a couple of hours in the middle of the day in Europe to close all the businesses, so everybody goes to lunch and goes home and eats at home and then goes back to work. I could see our generation coming up with like, all right, y'all, we're going to really make this day a day where all businesses are mostly closed unless you're really essential. And that way everyone can enjoy their family or not have to work as much, or go to a 4-day work week instead of 5 days. Like I can see, I mean, with this whole COVID situation, is forcing people to consider it a lot more, working from home or halfway working from work, shorter work weeks, I'm more productive. A lot of things can be possible.
Totally. We can structure stuff however we want. And I'm too thinking of Sabbath and all the different types of religious and cultural traditions that have had built in rest. There's a policy for resting.
Yeah. A policy for resting, all the way through all the cultures, religions, everything in nature. Everyone understands that there's an opposite and equal reaction for everything we do, right? And that requires us to rest.
Mm. And look at the example that you're leading of it, where you're resting and then you're doing all of these other things too, because you're also equal and opposite side of it.
Absolutely. Yeah, because I put out so much, I want to be 100% present, and I need to make a lot of quick decisions. I need to be sharp. I need to be able to make decisions that impact a lot of things later on. And I need to be clear-headed. So if I'm not clear-minded, clear and free thinking, then I'm not my best self. And so I know what that requires is it really requires me to dive into my reservoir of going into nature and just looking at the inspirational sceneries that is presented before me, and taking a moment to appreciate the every breath and every step, and the little moments and the single heartbeat, you know. And so to remind myself that things are far bigger than you think, you know, and you are far smaller than you think, right? So just a point of clarity and point of understanding and communicating with myself what the deal is, so then I can in turn continue on that path towards my North Star.
This has been a big exhale of a podcast, and it feels so good for me to know that you're out there and people like you are out there changing literally every day with how they're running their businesses and running their lives. How this stuff can all be, and how this is literally like how it is on this exact day that you were existing as business owner.
Absolutely.
And I know you got another meeting to get to here, so I want to wrap up time-wise and communicating about communication. I'm not really sure how to end about what feels.
Well, I would say when you initially brought up the subject of communication, I was like, okay, well, I can speak a lot of things on communication, but the one thing I will speak on is that when most people think of communication, we think of an outward projection of our thoughts or our concerns or our feelings, right? But what I want people to think about is the opposite, is the inward communication, the things that we say to ourselves and the things that we give life to with our thoughts. And those are 10 times more important than what literally comes out of our mouth and is projected with into sound. So guard your communication to yourself daily. Guard it.
You're getting a siren of exclamation behind you for the first time this whole recording. That's cool.
Yeah.
Ooh, that shift to, and all of the euphemisms of as within, so without, as above, so below, of what is your internal policy and how do you use your internal policy to shift external policies.
Absolutely.
I'm so excited to see the policies you shift and to have your coffee too next time I'm in Los Angeles. Oh my gosh, and to see your documentary, so many things.
Yes, yes, yes. All coming soon.
Thank you so much for your time. This was such an easeful podcast. This was very, yes, this was a very cool, a very easy and exciting, and what's the word, invigorating. It feels like a very invigorating podcast. I really appreciate your time.
Well,
And your
thank you,
sharing.
thank you. I appreciate you and giving me the time and the platform to share some of my few little thoughts.
I look forward to having you share more whenever it works for you to share more of them.
Absolutely.
Thank you so much again for coming on.
You're welcome, Annie. Thank you for your time, and we'll keep in touch for sure.
Definitely. Thank you, listeners, for tuning in, and thanks for being you.